Welcome back, everybody. I'm Terry McGraw with Cape Endeavors, and this is our podcast, Bourbon and Bytes. Today, I have the honor and the privilege of being blessed by Michael Weigand. Mike and I have known each other for many, many, many years. I think we met when you first came out of West Point as a young second lieutenant waiting to go to Ranger School, which is, I should make the audience aware, not only they may be familiar with you as your civilian endeavors with Shift 5 and your current stuff, but your military history is pretty admirable as well. You're really kind of a Renaissance man. I mean, you were a West Point graduate. You were an infantry officer. You were a Ranger. You were a cyber warrior. You also build avionic platforms in your spare time. You are a pilot as well. Truly kind of a Renaissance guy. And I was telling Mike earlier, my producer, that you're not weird either. Like, have that level of intelligence are kind of strange, but you're not. You're remarkably grounded for a guy that's got the acumen that you bring to bear. You are, and I've said this to you before, one of the smartest guys I've ever had the pleasure of working with. So thank you very much for your time, for coming on and chatting with us today.
Thank you, Terry. It's a pleasure to be here. Pleasure to talk to your audience.
Yeah, man. And so, again, you kind of had this kind of a unique path to where you are today as sort of a corporate head. But I think that path is probably interesting of it itself. So kind of give us the audience kind of a flavor for like how you got from there to here.
Oh boy. Well, I had a really exciting military experience that you kind of touched on. Went to West Point, did not get into any service academies right out of high school. So I had to try extra hard. I did a year of like prep school in New Mexico, finally got into West Point. And because of that extra year of kind of prep school, I did like basically a year of like, junior college. I was so happy to be there that I took like full advantage of these incredible internship opportunities that they afforded. So I got like this really unique kind of leg up on my military career, which subsequently has helped me a lot in business. Served 8 years in the Army. It was a wonderful time to grow as a young man, as a leader, pick up some technical skills along the way. I was infantry for my first 4 years. Then I became one of the first cyber officers when that branch was established in the Army. Actually, I think it was like my first week in the military, I met you in the basement of like this operations center bunker facility. It was really cool. You took me under your wing, and I really appreciate that. But after leaving the Army in 2019, I just had this entrepreneurial itch, and I really wanted to do something kind of impactful. I was passionate about securing operational technology systems. And to me, that meant the computers that make weapon systems operate, what the Army will call line replaceable units, but basically these embedded computers and the brains behind our tanks, our fighter jets, our rocket launchers, et cetera. And I thought that there was a need for cybersecurity on those because we didn't have antivirus, IDS or IPSs on any of these systems, and yet they control these really significant, physical outcomes. So, lashed up with a couple buddies, we founded Shift 5. That company, has been tremendously successful, and builds hardware and software that are added to these weapons platforms across the DoD's services to provide monitoring and data collection. And it actually turned out through our journey at Shift 5 that we realized that data collection, the value of the internal nervous system data was really valuable, and that could be used to enhance maintenance and other use cases. So then I left go ahead.
Pause there for just a second. I got a follow-up question because I don't think the audience fully appreciates what you just said. So in the commercial arena, operational technologies have a similar problem set, right? They were built for long-term usage, but no thought whatsoever to how you would secure that once they become interconnected. I think most people would be stunned to realize that all of the sort of the IT connected battlefield systems were designed for communication on the battlefield, but I don't think folks really thought about how one could manipulate that connectivity in a deployed environment. So what's your view on that?
Yeah, whether you look at operational technology in enterprise and business or in the military, systems that were built 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, which we still find in use today, they're originally built under the assumption that they would be air gapped. Then we interconnected everything because of these obvious benefits to letting everything talk to everything else. But along the way, we didn't really mix in cybersecurity. So what does that mean? Well, anybody that's traveled internationally on a wide body jet, a modern wide body jet, probably was flying on an aircraft that is fly-by-wire, meaning that the computers are physically in control of sending messages between the cockpit and what the crew is kind of dictating and actuators, whether they're hydraulic, electrically driven, or something else. It's all data messages. There's software and computers in between that are processing all of it. There's no antivirus on these commercial avionics systems. There was no requirement to do so until the FAA passed, until Congress passed the FAA Reauthorization Act last year, dictating that new aircraft designs that are approved, this is only go forward, there's no mandate to kind of retrofit existing stuff, have to have some cybersecurity embedded into their avionics design. Now, industry consortia have made recommendations. Interestingly, just in the aviation space, the Europeans have actually been leading that, which is it kind of makes me sad because the FAA historically has been kind of the world regulation kind of standard bearer until a few years ago, and I fear that we're ceding that. So I can put a pin in that for a later discussion if you really want to start sipping bourbon deeply. But yeah, we wanted to solve that problem, and so Shift 5 was born to bring solutions to bear, and it turned out to be a really complex set of problems. But when you dig into it, it unlocks so much value. You can secure systems and get additional data collection out of the systems that ultimately more than pays for the security solution, making systems smarter, better, healthier, safer at the end of the day. But after a 5-year journey with Shift 5, I was ready to take a break, look towards some new problems, and took some time off to kind of reconnect with family. And now I'm on to a new entrepreneurial endeavor.
So I'll let you talk about that after we sort of preface the conversation, because I think how you got into this new endeavor. Well, so we have a mutual friend named Chris Perry. Chris Perry is actually going to be a future guest on the podcast. But Chris said something to me about it. You were the topic, because I've always been kind of in awe of you and Chris. And he said, Mike has this unique ability to be in every room with someone who has a unique view on a problem set. And Mike just has this unique ability to see the problem in all its piece parts, be in all those rooms, and then pull it all together and come up with a solution. And so actually the track record I have with you it proves that point. I mean, even when you were a young second lieutenant, it was very, very clear that you had a mental acuity that most people do not have. Your wife is probably over there gagging at the moment when I.
Oh my God, her eyes are broken in the roll right now. Yeah, no doubt.
But it is true, you've brought a confluence of problem sets and your knowledge about them to bear, and most of the things that you've solved. Shift 5 was a culmination of that. Your current endeavor, I think, that we'll get into is that as well. But I'd like to preface it with sort of a discussion of developments in machine learning and what's being labeled AI, and I guess it's closer to AI than it's ever been before, and sort of your love for avionics and your development of not only you're a pilot, but you also have intimate familiarity with building avionics as a software structure, right? I mean, you've done both, and oh, by the way, you've been a cyber warrior and you've been an infantry officer. Those experiences give you a pretty wide view of a lot of different problem sets, and you have this unique ability to bring it together and solve problems. So we had discussed, you and I, a while ago about sort of the implications of autonomous and semi-autonomous weapons platforms, meaning that, I made the comment that like the race here is really who can outspend one another with it's no longer about you throwing bodies at the battlefield. Now it's like, how do I create battle damage, with hypersonic capabilities, with remote drone capabilities, etc. That it seems like the battlefield is moving in a direction that I don't think we anticipated about 10 years ago. And so you've seen that space. And so first I'd like to get your thoughts on sort of, how do you feel about sort of developments in AI in general, and then sort of what those implications mean for the Department of Defense in a weapons platform kind of arena?
Well, so a couple of reflections to some things you mentioned. First off, thank you for all the platitudes. I'm smiling because I'm uncomfortable with all the nice things you said. um, but yeah, I think that I prove that this model, that innovation happens when you can kind of take interdisciplinary experiences and kind of fuse them together, right? That's pretty well established. Innovators, I think, have been doing that for forever. Like that's kind of, I think, where I've derived some, I don't want to call it a superpower, but some margin of success. So I encourage people to to lean into their hobbies and interests if they're dissimilar. Like, it's amazing how these dissimilar things come together to help you solve problems. When it comes to AI, weapon systems, munitions, defense, I think that I've been surprised with what LLMs have been able to accomplish, where we see AI, whatever label you want to put on it, AGI, the evolution of expert systems. Like, as a computer scientist, I think I took the view up until about a year ago that, like, oh, we've been doing this for decades. I didn't understand what had changed. And then about a year ago, once I had some space to take some time off and think deeply about new problems that I wanted to solve, I faced these problems where I was like, wow, I really want to spin up products really quickly. I really want to write software to demonstrate a concept in my head to somebody, to get feedback, to play and experiment with different market ideas. And I want to do this quicker. So I started just playing with some new tools that came out. And I think a lot of the audience are probably familiar. Every major AI, tool provider has some type of code agent that's come out in the last couple of weeks. But I started playing with those pretty early, and I was just blown away with how much faster I could quickly turn around prototypes. Often behind the scenes, I could move so fast that I was actually losing understanding of the complexity of the system underneath, and started to experience where I think the frontier of these models hallucinating and just inventing trash data and throwing things back was. But the marginal benefit up until that point was just so massive that I actually have taken the view now that I think AI, as we understand it, might actually be underhyped right now. Mm-hmm. So maybe that puts me in the minority or gets me labeled as a tech bro. But what we can do with AI today, what I've used it for just in the last 2 weeks, and I can give you some specific examples, would completely blow my prior self, blow my mind.
Yeah.
We were trying to, let me give you an example, Terry. We were trying to integrate this very cheap little commercial radio into basically a smart loitering munition that we are developing here at Aventra. But there's no documentation for how to communicate with the radio to change its settings other than using this really dorky software program that only runs on Windows. And we wanted to hook it up to an embedded Linux computer and be able to change it over the air using our interface. We were able to hook up a USB sniffer, basically exercise all the different functionality, get the byte strings, and just dump it into an AI and tell it hey, here are all the different configurations, and here was the response, or the command and the response. Figure out the, basically figure out the protocol. And we raced Anthropic and OpenAI's models against one another, and they both came out with 95% complete protocol reverse engineering um, specifications that we were able to test and validate. And they did it in like 20 minutes. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy.
Because the amount,
Um,
like, you could have come up with the same outcome given enough time, right? And that's where I've found that the highest return on investment for us. And well, I say investment, it's almost nothing. Is the speed at which we can produce high quality things that would take in. We could have come up with the same high quality outcome, but just taken a hell of a lot longer. And the there is a pro and a con to the large language models. You are getting the sum total of every person's written knowledge, but there's also a lot of idiots in that knowledge base, right? So it's yeah, you always trust but verify. You have to do that. I think the models are getting better. It's sort of the hallucinations are getting turned down. I think we're getting better at traceability, but there is somewhat of an opaque nature of it, which makes it uh, a little bit suspect for me personally. Like, as a cybersecurity guy,
mhm.
I appreciate the power of them, and I use them all the time as well. From everything from documents prototyping, it can help you work through problems much faster. But it's an opaque model. You really can't look under the hood. You can't do inspection of the content. And oh, by the way, could you, even at this point with the data set so large? I'm not sure you could, other than using other AI models, sort of decompose the sum total of these things. So, but I agree with you; they're incredibly powerful. I have made a few snippets recently of the huge impacts it's going to have in certain industries. Like, I used Liquid Death's commercial that they created complete with that. It took longer to watch it than it did to make it, which is terrifying, which means, no cameramen, no directors, no actors, no set technicians, no grips. I mean, like everything that would have been brought to bear to make a real commercial, every one of those things was obviated, which is really cool if you want to make a great commercial and you have no budget. It's horrifying if you're the key grip on a commercial stage set, right? I mean, it's the implications are for everything that a person like you can do with AI. There's a person who's going to lose their job because of it as well. So anyway.
I guess just to play the optimist for a second, right now there's tens of millions of like software developers that are capable of like creating like capabilities, products, tools within this whole sum of like the however many billion human beings there are on the planet.
Mm.
I think AI tools that I've used recently are going to massively increase that number. There will be hundreds of millions of people next year that will be capable of quickly turning out a software app to solve like whatever their business problem is. So
That's a great point.
as an entrepreneur, like that's great. I think it means two things. One, like access to knowledge obviously has like been massively democratized, and the marginal cost of that access to knowledge has changed. This is going to have fundamental implications for education. I think a lot of other people have spoken more intelligently on that. But that's really exciting as like a maker or a builder. If you have the confidence to like go out, figure things out and build new things, like these new tools just open up the toolbox. On the other hand, like it's fundamentally going to change, I think, competition in the idea sphere. If you are a maker, if you are an entrepreneur, like now this all becomes about speed. And so, you know, let's take it back to your original question, which is like, how are these things can impact the art of developing products for war? I think what we've seen in the Russia Ukraine conflict is that the OODA loops and the capability development cycles have shrunk, and they are smaller now than they were a decade ago, than they were exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this trend will continue. I think that AI will be a massive contributing technology enabler to shrinking those OODA loops. The speed with which we innovate products for war or in other markets is the metric that, as like a board member, I would be judging, especially like legacy companies, their ability to react and pivot to market demands. Like that's going to be key. Um,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this generalization applies whether you're talking about like the American auto industry and its ability to react to like Chinese automakers that no longer suck
Yeah.
and that are in many ways are like leapfrogging us in technology. Like we can only use tariffs to shelter us from like foreign markets that are turning out potentially better technology for so long. Like how can we judge those companies, their ability to react, develop new technology, their ability to bring it to market? Like speed has always been, um, I think uh, you know the OODA loop speed reaction cycle has always been the key enabler in this creative and destruction cycle that you can apply to companies, markets, countries, militaries at war. So I think when we really step back, that's what we're looking at. We're seeing a new technology that's just fundamentally going to change the way that people work and react. And if you're not using these technologies, you're not going to be competitive. You're not competitive already if you're not employing them.
Yeah, my previous guest Wendy Thomas, made that point pretty clear. It's like the bell is rung. There is no unringing this bell. We are not rolling this back. It's not going away. It's not the speed of its infiltration into society and global geopolitics is already there. I think what we can do is help to try to shape it, mitigate some of the risks. For example, with AI content, if we don't want to lose our grip on reality, AI developed content for deep fakes needs to be identified. Europe is again leading the U.S. in that regard by having the AI tagging and identification law. I can't remember exactly what it was called, but European Union has already recognized what the geopolitical implications are for having deep fake technology. I mean, 3 years ago, you could tell lack of eye movement. You could see kind of the lips, not matching the voice. In 18 months, that was already gone. Like now, you'd be hard pressed for a human to recognize a deep fake that's being created by the models today. I don't think the human eye can actually discern it. So I think only technologically can we provide those benefits. But that said, I wanted to pivot a little bit more to what you're kind of currently doing, because it brings several of these topics together. And if you're even comfortable talking about sort of where you're at. So I was at I guess it was the AFCEA. I don't know, maybe I can't remember the technology conference, and I was just blown away that every one of the weapon systems developers that was there was bringing some autonomous, semi-autonomous, remotely operated weapons system. And it's funny because the price points of those are pretty staggering. I guess it's less than a Joint Strike Fighter, but in terms of just production of these things, they're still not exactly Walmart price tags. And so the question, in my mind, I'm walking around going, this is really a race to who can outspend one another in technology, or I should say, who can out innovate at a lower price point and create a higher velocity. I think is going to take the edge. But to your new venture, if you're comfortable talking about sort of where you've arrived in that. If not, I'll start pinging you on the general topics at hand. But can you talk about your current venture to any real degree, or are you there yet? Or are you still kind of under deep?
Yes. Well, I'll give you the exclusives, right? So we're coming out of stealth. New company's called Aventra. We're based here in Herndon, Virginia, right outside Dulles Airport. And let me start with like the problem that I was gripped by. So last summer, I found myself with a bunch of free time. After like a week, I got really bored, and I started looking around, and quickly, like a problem just gripped me. When you like somebody exposes you to an issue and you just find yourself thinking about it in the middle of the night. Like, I don't know if this is natural for people, but like this is what happens to me sometimes. And then boom, like all of my life, focus like alters as I start to experiment with it. So I started working in my garage on this problem of how can we create long range strategic fires or long range bombardment capabilities at an order of magnitude less cost than what exists today. So first, what is a strategic fires capability? Think like Tomahawk missiles or like B-2, B-1 bombers flying halfway around the world and like dropping bombs on a target. Think about how expensive this stuff is. So take the Tomahawk missile. List price somewhere in the $2 to $3.5 million a shot, but you have to factor in that like there's been several decades worth of and hundreds of millions, couple $1 billion total of research, development, testing, engineering that's gone into this. And there's an entire enterprise that has to be paid constantly to like maintain just the R&D and the support of the weapon, because you don't just hit a button. It basically has to be programmed. And there's a tremendous amount of infrastructure that goes into enabling the constant programming. Then the missile has to be launched off of a hundreds of millions of dollars to $1 billion platform, typically, right? So think of like either a submarine, an Arleigh Burke destroyer or a cruiser, or the cheapest option is, the new, I can't remember the specific name, but basically like a vertical launch cell in tractor trailer format that I think the Army just developed. I can't remember the name of the capability, but regardless, like these are really, really expensive. You amortize all of those costs and spread it out across like a per shot cost. At the end of the day, you're looking at, I'm just making this up, but like somewhere in like $20 to $50 million a shot. And what does that get you? Get you a couple hundred. Yeah, get you a couple hundred, maybe, I can't remember what the warhead size is, but it gets you a couple hundred to like 2,000 pounds of ordnance on a target. Incredible capability. Like, there's not a lot of nations in the world that can do that. And there's a whole bunch of munitions similar to that, air launch ones like the JASM or the UK Storm Shadow. Recently a lot of people have learned about that because of its successful use in the Ukraine conflict. So I thought, wow, like how many of these can we build a year? What's our manufacturing capacity? It's actually quite small. You can look this up. They're expensive. What happens when we get into a near-peer conflict and we use all of our precision munitions in the first couple of days? Then what? Well, we have a lot of capacity to build kind of dumb munitions, but those dumb munitions, to project them at long range, require exquisite systems and support infrastructure and logistics to get the dumb bombs there, right? Think bombers, aerial refueling, all the infrastructure, logistics, maintenance that it takes to project that, the maintenance costs associated with every flight hour of all of those vehicles. Like this is crazy when you start to step back and look at it. So what does that mean? I'll just give you like the summary of my problem analysis. After like 5 to 7 days of conflict with a near peer on the other side of the planet, we're out of Schlitz to hold them under long range bombardment. Bombardment means that you're throwing stuff at them constantly and making them react to it. They have to shoot things down. You're disrupting them. You're denying them. People have to, seek shelter at enemy airfields or ports because like things are coming in and the air raid sirens are going off. And there's tremendous value to holding an enemy under bombardment, but you have to have a system that enables you to do that. And when you're doing a bombardment operation, economics matter. So I thought, wow, wouldn't it be interesting to take on the problem of, again, long-range bombardment or precision fires at an order of magnitude lower cost? What does that look like? And that's kind of where Aventra was born. After doing a whole bunch of systems analysis and talking to people, I realized that a really kind of novel and at the same time old school way of warfare was to use balloons that float at really high altitude to take advantage of winds aloft. Think of like the jet stream, to move fast from point A to point B and then drop autonomous, self-guided munitions that have wings and can take advantage of all of that potential energy, that altitude, to steer and overcome the inaccuracies in the balloon steering so that they can hit precision targets. And that's what we're building at Aventra. We are building sensor and wing glide kits. Think of them as JDAMs, but that are optimized to live in the stratosphere where it's really, really cold, like -60, -70 degrees Celsius. It's almost -100 Fahrenheit. Survive through day-night cycles in near vacuum, and travel potentially for multiple days to get to their target, release, and then go hunt for targets within kill boxes that they're pre-programmed to. Another assumption made is that, hey, we might not have communications with them, so they need to be fully autonomous. They have to be able to understand when it's safe and not safe to kind of arm themselves if they're kinetic, and make decisions that are acceptable to how we, fight war according to law of armed conflict and just war principles, which is how we differentiate ourselves from others, right? So that's what we're building at Aventra, and we've gone from zero garage to TRL-7 overseas testing with military forces, many iterations of prototyping. We did all of that and raised venture funding and have kind of scaled a business in about 7 months. And here shortly, we will be TRL-9 and opening up a low-rate initial production line and actually expanding the product portfolio from the initial capability to derivatives that provide some really cool, unique features for some associated edge cases that I'll kind of hold close until the time's ready to reveal.
And I appreciate you being so transparent. I know that, and personally, I know you've been working on this for a while now. Actually, not as long. What you just said is, I think that a lot of our audience are going to be lost on the implication of that. So, in a former life when I was in the Army, I was part of the Army Experimentation Division, and the amount of folks that had good ideas that would go from a level 1 to level 9 in procurement was probably 1%, maybe not even. Most folks lived in that R&D cycle of funding and good ideas, but not all good ideas ever see the light of day, much less make it to employment. And you managed to do all that in about a year. So again, I give you laudatory comments, not because I'm showering you with just hyperbolic phrases, but they're well earned. I mean, you've truly do have kind of a gift for problem solving in the extreme, and our weapon systems are better for it. Our capabilities are better for it. So thank you for doing what you're doing for us and our allies. Stepping back a moment, we got a few minutes before we got to wrap this up, but I wanted to talk a little bit because, again, this is sort of tangential interests. I am a big drone enthusiast in my private life. I like to fly drones. I take it's a pastime that actually you introduced me to a long time ago. And I've spent a ridiculous amount of money buying drones. But there is a huge amount of discussion around, you talk about Chinese technologies leapfrogging the US. The reality is, in the drone space, and I'll just talk commercial usage, not militarily, commercial drone use spaces, the Chinese have the most capable at the least price of any nation state out there, any commercial entity out there. I mean, DJI drones are the gold standard for your commercial drones, both in, you think of the vertical market, agriculture, every kind of vertical market that uses drone, to include first responders, right? In here where I live in Florida, Florida actually led the nation in sort of trying to remove Chinese drones from the marketplace, especially if it's going to be used by the government. And as a cyber guy, now, number one, I'm not necessarily pro China. I'm not at all. I am pro capability, but as a cyber guy, most of the hyperbole, and I keep using that term, around the threat to Chinese drones is easily mitigated. I mean, it's not like you can't mitigate, traffic and the communications pathways. It's not like you can't mitigate firmware update. There's a lot of things you can do that, if you're worried about, espionage as the root of your angst against it, there's lots of mitigating strategies. But on the flip side of that is, our drone capability in the United States commercially has been woefully inadequate. A lot of the companies that have started have gone by the wayside, and their price points are exponentially higher than those you can buy abroad. Even Pro, for example, outside of the U.S. So, question: where do you fall on sort of the commercial banning of, or I should say, the legislative banning of commercial drones coming out of China, and the European Union to some extent? Do you think the U.S. will be able to pivot to create a more cost-effective solution that won't cripple sort of your first responders in the U.S.?
I think the first thing I'd mention is that we have some great drone companies here in the U.S. PDW, Skydio are like the first two that come to mind. Where I know some of the leadership over there, they have built incredible engineering teams. American innovation, American engineering is strong and exceptionally capable. Where are we weak? It's the tooling. We don't know. We have forgotten how to build the machines that build the machines. We shipped those jobs overseas, and we need to bring that back. We need tool and die engineers. We need people that are experts in everything from stamping to building high-end carbon fiber layup machines. That we need more machinists. Like these are, I think a lot of people, like there's this debate about like are those types of factory jobs good jobs? You know what? Actually, I think they can be. I've been to some domestic and foreign factories where you see expert machinists, and you can. I think in America we can bring those jobs back, and people can have good paying middle class lifestyles based on that and raise a family. And I think that we've gone a little too far, like pushing a lot of that stuff out. Where does the lead? Yeah, so I'm pro reindustrialization.
Hell yeah.
I think that that's actually where we derive our power, our kind of national security is tightly coupled with that. As somebody who builds things here in America, I have learned how difficult it is to get quality wire harnesses built at foreign, like it just can't do it at like foreign prices. Why? There's a variety of reasons for that. Does legislation like help protect us or bring those jobs back when we ban foreign products? That's the interesting question. And I'm a little bit undecided on it. So let me just shape for the audience my thinking on answering your question there. Like if the government like bans all like Chinese drones, does that harm us or help us? One, I think that on the pro side, it drives more, business to U.S. companies, and that creates the market, and there's a little bit of a flywheel effect. Mm-hmm. But two, it has this negative impact of insulating you from foreign product competition, because the market will naturally go out and buy the better value product, right? Mm-hmm. Better features at the better price point. So the better question, I think, is not so much like, do we ban or not ban? It's like, how do we set the economic conditions to level the playing field where American companies are forced to compete against the best foreign tech, where I believe that when we level the kind of the economic playing field, we will exceed because we can out innovate and we can out engineer. That's been our
you bring up a great point, because I've argued that the reason that CMMC as a program exists, which by the way we are heavily involved in, is because we've allowed our R&D developments in this country, our truly innovative, dynamic engine that is the United States historically. We've allowed foreign entities to just sort of steal our R&D for decades, and the reason that there's been this huge leapfrog is from R&D theft from our industrial base. The other thing that I find morally abhorrent, and the reason why I'm usually very anti-China when it comes to the marketplace, is essentially we're saying, for near slave labor or child slave labor, we're willing to accept cheap products, right? And morally, I have a problem with that, right? I mean, like we are literally the economic driver. What we're saying is, for cheap goods, we're willing to have an entire generation of oppressed people, building our crap for us in conditions that we would never accept as U.S. And so there's lots of reasons why I want to bring the industrial manufacturing back to the U.S. And I do believe, hey, talk about AI resilient jobs. You just articulated a whole suite of them. That I think we need to bring back into this country, but there is kind of that short term pain and gain cycle that you articulate.
Yeah. So I guess to answer your question, like I'm probably this is difficult. I think I'm probably against a Chinese ban, but I think that the government should contemplate, um, economic measures that help, I think, just level the economic playing field so that we're forced to compete, because then we'll get better tech, and you're building muscle, right? And you're doubling down on America's natural advantages, but it's got to be a level playing ground. Now, what's the right mechanism to do that? I think that's a longer question that I'm probably not educated or ready to discuss right now. But like that's kind of my natural reaction to it. The foreign labor advantage, and the decisions that we made to enable that so that we could elevate our quality of life, and how we kind of transferred a lot of this know-how and these jobs overseas. Like, well, that horse is already bolted. It's out of the barn. Now, I think the reality is that we're not competing against slave labor wages often. Like Chinese factory workers are paid a lot more now than they were 15 years ago. The challenge is that like they have introduced all kinds of manufacturing and business efficiencies, where now they have a flywheel advantage, where their labor rates are still lower than they are here in the US, but they're able to work more efficiently. And more importantly, they have more people with certain skill sets that we just can't find here in the US right now.
Right.
And that's a problem. I'll just give you like a very specific example that I just stumbled upon. Molded foam systems, right? Everybody's like bought if you've ever bought like a model airplane that has like a molded foam wing, you'll admire kind of how smooth it is. There's these little pellets that are pressed. It uses a really special machine that uses pressure and steam. And the Chinese are like 5 to 10 years ahead in that technology than what we have here in the US. The Europeans are 5 years ahead in that particular type of technology than what we have here. We have the ability to make large molded foam assemblies, but like a lot of that industry in the US, they build like shipping capabilities for like the Detroit auto industry, and they don't have the same surface finish because we haven't invested in the machines, and we don't have the ability to build those machines because we don't have the tool and die engineers at sufficient quantity to like go fix that problem. The people that are really good at building those machines now are on these other continents. So I think a lot about like where how are we going to compete in 10 to 30 years when we don't have like those tool and die engineers? How do we make it cool, acceptable, sexy, and a great lifestyle to, get into the trades? And how do we balance that, I think, with educational policy and economic policy? These are all these are the big questions of our times. And I think about it a lot, just at the tippy point of the spear when I'm trying to build a thing, how difficult it is to build a thing that's 100% made in America, and where is the right balance, right? Who are the economic partners that we're going to invest in, and to what degree do we share, values with, and how is that economic trade going to incent or disincent long-term alliances? Um, so
Well,
I hope that as a
okay.
population, we all think about that when we
No,
buy
I
things, when we
agree with you.
vote.
I struggle with it as well greatly because I am a huge believer in bringing back capability into the United States and sole sourcing stuff in the United States. I mean, for all of the geopolitical concerns that of a rapidly shifting world, and I think we need more self reliance in the U.S. where we used to be known for that. But by the same token, I'm not ignorant of the fact that there is a compendium of cost, and there's a wheel that flywheel has to generate. There has to be incentive. I do believe the answer for reinvigorating some of these areas is in public-private partnerships, at least in its initial stages, to get the flywheel engine, sole sourcing chips, et cetera, into areas that have historically been outsourced. So I think there's going to be some short-term pain for longer-term gain. But Mike, as always, you continue to stagger me with the amount of thought that you bring to problem solving, and you successfully have proven that you come up with some really clever and some very innovative solutions. Wish you all the best in the newest endeavor, and I know that the world just took a wake up call with that announcement. So I appreciate you sharing that with us here on Bourbon and Bytes. I'll let you any final comments or remarks or things that you'd like to drive home. But I can't tell you how much I appreciate this conversation, and I look forward to doing this again.
This was fun. I wish Cape Endeavors all the success, continuing to support your clients, and I appreciate your audience. Excited to see some of the comments that come out of this and to engage with them. Thank you.